What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Lesson on Coding. My name is Ryan Lesson. So recently I've been thinking, what have my buddies from Dev Bootcamp, my coding bootcamp, been up to lately? We graduated in 2015, and it's been 5 years since I've really connected with anyone to really see what they're doing. So I wanted to reach out to them pretty much on LinkedIn and through Instagram and other sources and try to hear back on what they're doing and are they still coding, most importantly. I know the big thing when we all started Dev Bootcamp 5 years ago was we wanted to start careers within coding and kind of had that, be a long-term career path for us. But after hearing back from some people, we're going to see that are they still coding and did going to Developer Bootcamp pay off? That's probably the most important thing we want to know is this investment? So Dev Bootcamp, while it's not around anymore, it's similar to other boot camps. Tuition is about, at the time, it was probably about $12,000 a year. Excuse me, it wasn't the whole year. It was actually 22 weeks. So $12,000 for 22 weeks of education, half remote and then half fully immersed. And that's a good chunk of change to put into learning a new skill. So 5 years later, I think at this point, we'll know who's still coding, who's still in the game, and who kind of went, found a different direction, a different path in their career. So let's get down to it. I reached out to the 13 people, and I reached out to one more person from Dev Bootcamp, and I asked them the simple question: do you still code? And while only about 5 or 6 of them responded, I do have some interesting results to share with you. So let's go through every single one of them. And for the people who didn't respond, we're going to look at their LinkedIn profile to see what they're still doing and make an educated guess on if they're still coding or not. So let's get started. So first up is we have a dear friend of mine, Eunice. So Eunice, she was very, very bright, I remember. So let's see what she's been up to. So we all graduated in 2015 for Dev Bootcamp. And as we could see, she's been working up the ranks at Triple Lift. I haven't heard of Triple Lift, but she seems to like it. She's been there almost 5 years, and she's been working up the ranks. Software from an intern to a junior to a data engineer. So think about this. She was an intern for 5 months. So that whole promise of making $100,000 right when you graduate, usually not true for most people. Here, she started off as an intern, but she worked her way up. Now she's a data engineer, so we could say that she does still code. And at this point, I would say she's probably a senior level engineer. So very good for you, Eunice. Next up, Courtney. So Courtney, let me close my messages. So Courtney right here, she was very bright herself. Let's see what she's been up to. So graduating in 2015, she worked at Feedback Sage. Review, make modifications. So nothing really here about coding. And here I create technical strategy and support a team of developers in building dynamic applications. So for nonprofits. So what I think she does now is it says right here, she's a product owner, but with the Dev Bootcamp skills of her learning to code, it probably helps her communicate with her development team a lot better than a product owner with no prior coding experience. So this bootcamp education for her has definitely been very helpful in her career, as we can see, and she's been at this company for almost 4 years. So does she still code? Probably not. But does her investment in going to Dev Bootcamp, is that paying off for her now? I would say so. All right, moving on. So we have one who codes and one who probably still doesn't code. All right, this is my friend Chris, and let's see what he's been up to. He's been all over the place. So he was actually a teaching assistant when he graduated, which is a great job. I wish I could have had this job. I was looking to get this job, and just a part-time gig to get you on your feet while you're looking for a job. So he was a teaching assistant, then he became an associate software director, then he was a client director. So it looks like he's moving up the ranks more towards management. Okay, and what's he doing now? So he's been at this company Insight for almost 2 years, and his most recent position is he's a project manager / scrum manager. So again, this investment into coding definitely helped him out, because to get to this project manager, scrum master position, you want to have the background in project development and you want to know how to code just to really understand what's going on with the development team and, again, be able to communicate with them better. But him having that experience as a developer makes it a very good transition from him into a project manager. So props to you, Chris, but he doesn't code. So as you're accounting, we have, let me just write this down. So we have one who codes and we have two who don't code. All right, moving on. David. All right, so David also. All right, sorry about that. I accidentally clicked. So here's David. Let's see what he's been up to. So I remember he was working at Verizon before he decided to join Developer Bootcamp, the coding bootcamp. Let's see what he's been doing. So graduated in 2015. Here's his Verizon experience. He was an application developer for 2 years. So it looks as if he was a junior level developer, kind of learning under the tutelage of maybe more senior developers. And now he's at Warner Brother Game Studio in New York, and he's still a software engineer. So this is very cool. A lot of people who go into bootcamp want to become game engineers, and it looks like he is actually doing that. New interfaces, APIs. So he's definitely still coding, and he's doing a great job. He definitely has a job that a lot of people who join bootcamp still want. So there's another one for code. Okay, moving on. Jay, very nice guy. He is graduated 2015. So right here, he started as a full stack developer, but we don't really know what this was here. But he was doing Ruby on Rails. So at that bootcamp, we did learn Ruby on Rails primarily. Not many people still use that, so I'd be surprised if he's still using Ruby on Rails. But as we can see here, he now lives in Los Angeles. Our Dev Bootcamp was in New York City. He's now in Los Angeles, and he's still a web developer. So another one for coding. Good for you, Jay. Okay, Arcangelo. So Arcangelo, he actually went to the bootcamp under a contract with a company, pretty much saying that they would pay for his education at the bootcamp if he committed to, let's say, 2 years or so at the company. This is a great way to avoid paying that initial down payment to learn to code. While bootcamps aren't for everyone, you could definitely learn everything online. Sometimes that in-person education is very useful for people, and also you're making connections with people. So he did that. He was able to avoid that tuition to do this, and he was very smart as well. So as I could see here, he's a systems analyst, so he definitely still codes. He looks like he's been coding for a while now, pretty much nonstop. So Arc, good on you. Still coding. Okay, moving on. Eliza. Now I remember Eliza very well because her and I were both looking for jobs, and we were both kind of tossing back and forth over LinkedIn messages all these clients were looking at and if they're hiring junior level developers. Now it's funny to go back and see these messages 5 years later. So let's see what she's been doing. Graduated 2015. She became a mentor as well. So she became a teaching assistant. Great part-time job to get started. Was a front-end developer for almost 5 years. So it looks like she was at TriPlay or maybe doing 2 jobs, which is very good. If you have the time to do 2 jobs to really crank that experience in when you're younger, go ahead. And now it looks like she's in Charlotte, North Carolina. So she moved from New York to Charlotte, North Carolina, and she's a tech architect delivery specialist. So probably she's probably helping, if I had to guess, taking business processes and pretty much getting the architecture for the tech team so they'll be able to implement that business process, which is a very great job to have. So yes, she is still coding. Probably not as much, but there's still definitely a little bit you have to do. She's probably doing more planning and more kind of understanding the business needs and being able to translate to code. Okay, moving on. Aaron. Okay, so Aaron, what is he doing now? He looks like he started his own company, which is great. So he started this company called Press Hut, and he's been doing this for almost 3 years. Let's check out Press Hut. Okay, so this is another big thing. A lot of people went to boot camps. They wanted to start their own business. Looks like Aaron's living the dream out of everyone else here. So what does this do? Press Hut saves you hundreds of hours by aggregating data for over 750,000 journalists. So it basically aggregates all your news and probably it's probably good for marketing. The most powerful it's a database for journalists. Okay, so this is very cool. It's a good way to get how it works. We could find relevant journalists, save your favorite journalists, and start pitching. Okay, and then we can start pitching our ideas to different journalists. Okay, maybe this is a way to get news out. I love this. This is awesome. I'm so glad to see that he is working with his own company, and it seems to be going very well. I love the quality of the site. This is very good. So props to you, Aaron. There's another one for someone who codes. All right, let's move on. So here are the people who responded. Let's take a look, shall we? Okay, so first up is a friend of mine named Bruno. Reach out to him. Bruno, are you still coding? He is. And then I asked him, what is he working with? And he's primarily working front-end these days, JavaScript and React. Now, that's very popular these days. I do feel that a lot of people from boot camps are going into full-stack JavaScript, maybe it's kind of saturating the market a little bit, but there's definitely still that need for that senior level, and he was brilliant. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was a senior level or maybe even the technical lead on his team. So JavaScript and React, and for backend, again, we were primarily Ruby focused. He is using Python/Flask backend. I'm not sure what Flask is. Maybe it's pretty much like Rails. That's kind of a framework for the language. So Bruno's still coding. Okay. All right. So this is my friend Chris. I said, hey, are you still coding? He actually transitioned to a product manager role. So he is not coding anymore, really. So he's maybe doing a little bit on the side, but he's mostly managing a team of developers, which is great. I mean, that's kind of that next step if you want to be in more of that managerial role. And the thing is, knowing how to code, knowing what the developers go through, make you that much more of an asset and that much more of a better leader, in my opinion. So I'm going to have to say that he does not really coding day to day, but he is definitely benefited from learning how to code. And I know he started off as a junior developer at other companies before he finally transitioned probably up the ranks to this role. So congrats to you, Chris. Okay. So here is the one person that I found from the 14 people I reached out to from my Dev Bootcamp class that actually is just not even in software anymore. So this is the one person that I would say did not really benefit from learning to code. I'm not saying he didn't benefit, because you definitely learn stuff. You definitely have this tangible skill that you're able to use, but that's not what he's doing in his career. I pretty much asked him, hey, why are you not coding anymore? Because we messaged on LinkedIn, then I messaged on Instagram, and he just said, I just found doing it as a job wasn't for me, unfortunately. This happens a lot. Coding is not for everybody. It's for people who actually enjoy kind of sitting in front of your computer and learning and like pretty much diving as deep as you can and learning as much as you can. So it's not for everyone. Some people just like it as a hobby to pretty much mess around with and do different things. But mostly from what I see is the people who stay in the industry for long are the people that really want to understand everything about the language, and they're just invested. They're always looking. They have that kind of nerd mentality where they're so invested in learning this language. So unfortunately, this job was for him. I talked to him a little after this back and forth, and he's actually doing really, really good with his other company right now, and I'm glad that he is. But here's an example. Not everybody from these coding boot camps are having these $100,000 a year jobs, $100,000 plus year, $100,000 plus a year jobs. So here's an example right here. All right, moving on. So here's my friend James. He was brilliant. I'm not surprised that he was still coding. And yeah, he was working for a software consulting company as a developer. What's up? So that's what I did. I started off working at a consulting company. I loved it. It's a great way to not only learn from more senior developers, but also understand what working with a client feels like. Because if a client has problems, you want to be able to solve them, and you want to be able to give him the deliverables that he's looking for. He or she is looking for. Okay. And what has he been working with? He says it's been an amazing career path. Couldn't be happier for the guy. Haven't even once thought it was a bad choice. Amazing. That's what you want to hear. But primarily full stack JavaScript. So again, full stack JavaScript. He's doing some Rails work, which is interesting, because mostly the people I've talked with haven't even touched Rails since their bootcamp days. All right, so another one for coding. All right, next up here, John. John's a very good friend of mine. Yes, I'm still an engineer, but busy with a newborn son, so I haven't really got to talk to him yet. But he's still an engineer, and he's still coding. So there's another one. Moving on. Miguel. So Miguel wasn't actually in my class, and this is the last one here, but he's someone I still keep in touch with. And yeah, he's still working. He says, I've actually just started with a Homeland Security Investigations Innovation Lab. That's a mouthful. As a program manager. So he is a manager. After Dev Bootcamp, I did some freelance iOS work. So he completely pivoted away from the Ruby on Rails to iOS. And ever since, been working mostly with Python and working with data. So maybe he's more of a data analyst role, which is awesome. You know, he's still, and maybe he also says he's managing people. So it doesn't surprise me the bit. He was one of the smarter guys I could remember. So there's another one. I'm going to say that he is coding. Okay, so we looked over 14 people, and here are the final results of the 14 people. 10 of them are still doing a programming job today. That could be anything from being a kind of more of a manager who helps code, like a team lead, or they're starting their own company. 3 people don't code at all, but I would say they have benefited from the bootcamp experience, benefited from pretty much learning everything about it. And it's very helped them with their career path. And now they're kind of transitioning away from code, which there's nothing wrong with transitioning away from code. Again, if you don't love code, don't do it forever. Transition out into that more, if you want to become a manager or even start your own company, and then you don't need to worry about cleaning up Internet Explorer 11 defects, which I do way too much, and let's not get into that. And finally, there's only really one person out of this who I'm not gonna say didn't benefit, but is not using any programming in his career currently, but he is doing well. All right, so now at this point, I would say pretty much all these developers who are still coding, the 13 people who are still in positions that are still programming, I would say they definitely are earning over $100,000 a year. They're all more senior level program managers, product owners. They're all at this high level. So yes, you do get to that $100,000 level of earning that mostly every bootcamp promises, but it takes time. It does not happen overnight. It's not your first job. For me, my first job was $60K, and I had to uproot my life and move it down to Texas to really be able to do that. Okay, and that's another thing. You need to go where the job is. It's hard to be in a place and have the job come to you as a programmer, especially as a junior level developer. But hopefully things open up more. I know remote work is getting more popular. Me, myself, am pretty much transitioning into being fully remote. I've been fully remote since the pandemic started, and I hope to continue being fully remote. All right. It is very last word, a couple last words. It is very beneficial to go to a boot camp. It's not the style learning for everyone, but as you can see, just by the small sample size of 5 years and 14 people, almost everyone has benefited from the program and learning. And finally, I would say if you've gone to a boot camp and it's been a couple years, reach out to your old classmates, see how they're doing. For me, I love not only reaching out to them, but seeing my old messages about trying to get jobs as a junior level when we both left the boot camp and were trying to find jobs. So it was a pleasure to see those messages and be able to reconnect with some great old friends. Okay, that's all for me. I hope you all like this video, and take care. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.